Do you want to know what just one of the most beautiful sounds in the world is? Oh, that thundercrack of charged bolts, just And the good news is, it's insane this season. Hello, my fellow sorcerers! Welcome to my latest and greatest creation. See, I was having a mess around with charged bolts because a while back I made one of my favorite builds. A very unique playstyle whereby you simply teleport on top of enemies and that's enough to kill them from a automatic swarm of endless bolts. So in trying to push that forward, I actually ended up finding something so much better. So what's going on here? Well, I'm gonna say something very controversial. The Firebolt enchantment is really good. I know, what a real hot take there. Obviously, yes, Devouring Blaze, the Flame Fleeter glyph, the Burning Instinct board. We like our burning synergy. But one thing that it particularly synergizes with new in Season 2 is X-Files, because X-Files has a chance when you do damage over time damage to explode for a ridiculous amount of damage. So yes, when you hit something and put that burn on them, ticking away for minuscule amount of damage, but what's important is they are technically ticking, you see there the explosion damage. But the thing is, every time you hit an enemy, you apply the Firebolt enchantment damage over time. So on just one swipe, it's, 59. If I add another one, it's now 112. There's two going on, so it's now got double the amount of chance of blowing up X-Files. So where am I going with this? So Charged Bolts, as you know, fires a lot of bolts out, and each one of these individually counts as a separate hit. I.e., each one of them will put a stack of the Firebolt damage over time on. And even more than that, the explosion for 3 of them hitting will do yet another stack. So remember that one swipe of Arclash did 1 dot for like 56 damage a tick. If we fire a single Charged Bolts, we're up here at 704. That is many lots of Firebolt. And while it's only represented as one number, each one individually is rolling lucky hit to explode X-Files. Which then means we can take this concept and turn Charged Bolts into a X-Files exploding machine on top of all the other lovely things it can do. So we take that core concept, build peak Charged Bolts around it, and end up with a build that not only absolutely smashes tier 100s and Uber Lilith and every endgame content you could ever want it to, but it does so from range, safely, and while being immeasurably tanky. Honestly, this build might be up there for peak Abattoir of Xur because of just how reliably effective and safe it is from, yes, distance. Of course, it's not going to do as much damage as Pure Ball Lightning, but it also doesn't need to, because it still deletes everything. You only ever need to reach a certain level of damage before enemy health doesn't keep up, and then any more damage past that is kind of wasted. And this reaches that level while offering you so much more of a flexible, reliable playstyle that also just feels and looks phenomenal to pilot. Just these constant swarms of lightning everywhere, chasing enemies down, exploding them with both Charged Bolts itself explosion and X-Files explosion, while everyone is permanently stunned. You have infinite mana, you're constantly cycling your cooldowns, and you just feel like a god. I don't think I have played a build this season that is so comfortable. Like, it's just cruise control, and I can't get over how good it actually is now to run Charged Bolts. And yes, with the unique staff, which is awesome, because it's a really freaking cool staff with a really freaking cool effect now, especially since the buff and aspect swap. So without further ado then, let's get into making you the most rock solid of shock sorcerers. And yeah, it still has a healthy amount of ball lightnings everywhere, so you know it is insane. A skill tree for thee from me. 2 points in Firebolt to, yes, get to core, but as you know, it's going to take our first of 2 enchantment slots for the whole core of this Charge Bolt's many stacks of Firebolt, many go boom, multi-million crit deletes. It's just so good! Anyway, over to said cause, we grab Devastation, and then just the extra 9% multiplicative. We'll be spending at least 9% of our time above 50 mana. The mana generation in this is kind of silly. 5 out of 5 Charged Bolts as our main, spam, and we get Enhanced for the Explosion, and then finally Destructive for a hefty amount of damage reduction, and having this constantly active is one of the reasons this build is so shockingly tanky. You can, if you're doing easy content, open world stuff, you're using raiment, go to greater, but standard wise, destructive is the way. Over to your defensives, where we just get flame shield. We don't need the extras, we can save 2 points and better spend them, but we do get teleport all the way to the 30% DR, as it's too hefty to ignore. 3 out of 3 glass cannon, because we can. It's a big increase, and again, really tanky. Just this by itself cancels the negative of this out, so every extra DR we get is just pure DR. Then Elemental Attunement, so we can have our defensives resetting. Over to Conjuration, where we get the usual duo of Don't Die, constant barriers, and constant extra damage reduction. We're all about lucky hits here, so yeah, get as much lucky hit chance as you can from Precision Magic, and then we get Lightning Spear just to take the final slot on our bars. Honestly, this final slot can be fairly flexible, but I think Lightning Spear works the best, simply for the room-wide stunning. When Unstable Currents is going, when this is out, it will stun people, crit them, drop a ball lightning on them, and then, well, they're just dead. It's really kind of nifty. Then we go to your masteries, where you just want 1 rank in Blizzard. I mean, I have ranks of masteries on my necklace, so technically I could save the point here, but I want to show you it assuming that you don't. The reason we do this is for our source of cold damage for Rashas. Now, normally you could just get rid of the Blizzard and grab the Ice Blades to achieve the same effect, but because we are rolling lucky hits, damage over time, Rasha explosions already with Firebolt stacking, having an extra Blizzard on top just increases the chances of Rasha explosions going on even more. And it's really not hard to just whack a Blizzard down and then forget about it. It does instant, quick, cold damage, and it's an incredibly reliable way to keep that cold stack up in this build specifically that synergizes much better than throwing out a random Ice Blades. It's also much better for bosses, so that's the choice here. And then the cherry on top is that we just have so much mana, the mana to maintain it really isn't a concern. Over then to get you Devouring Blaze for that lovely critical strike multiplicative increase, and then we get all 5 into Ball Lightning and Enhanced, and then Wizards for all that crackling energy. This makes up our second enchantment slot, as the Charged Bolts zooming all over the place will be hitting people, exploding them, dropping a lightning on their face, and then they will get deleted. You will see so many of them in this build. It's kind of ridiculous. Just seas of lightning everywhere you look. You'll walk into the next room in a dungeon just to find everyone is already dead with 12 ball lightnings pulsing away on their corpses. It's so fun. And then to go along with that, we get Invigorating Conduit to help our mana along, though even then we probably could go without it, but it's nice to just really keep us consistently high up there resource-wise. To your ultimates, where we do get Unstable Currents, still very good, all the way to Supreme, and then we want Electrocution to get even more damage reduction. Everyone is always crit by our shock skills, and lastly, Overflowing Energy to lower the cooldown of both Unstable Currents and Teleport as much as possible. So that is your skill tree, everything nicely snugly in place. Looking at our gear and aspects, uniques, well, it's actually quite interesting. We only have 3 legendary aspects and everything else is unique. So let's cover those aspects then. The only offensive aspect is Piercing Static. Your charge bolts pierce and then do less damage afterwards. That's fine. We just need every charge bolt to hit as many enemies as possible, cause as many explosions as possible, both from the charged bolts 1 and X-Files 2. So this is lovely and fairly required here. Then we get Fortune. We want as much lucky hits to happen as possible to power X-Files, so this makes a lot of sense given we're always in barriers. And then the required Disobedience falls to the necklace as the only space left it can go, and very much it is needed, especially if you're doing sort of tier 90 plus, otherwise, well, you will get splatted. Uniques then, tell Rashas. Yep, this really is everything here. It's got the perfect affixes, well, maybe apart from the damage over time, but the lucky hit and cooldown reduction is premium, but that effect is just so much damage. Million damage, AoE pops constantly everywhere, what more can you ask for? Well, maybe a consistent near 60% multiplicative damage increase from our Tal Rashas. This still so busted ring. Get this on and you will have a great day. And hey, all of the affixes here are just for this build, and honestly many others. So then we have Tybalt's Will. The mana restore is really lovely consistently every time we teleport and flame shield, and the extra resource is good too, on top of, you know, the monstrous damage increase. Esu's Heirloom for the extra crit chance, just walking around with nearly 13% more is phenomenal, and then the extra crit damage, the mana cost reduction, the movement speed, all excellent. Then we want Raiment of the Infinite to do Raiment things. Group, stun, make us hit harder. Yeah, brilliant. That said, if you are doing difficult content, i.e. content where things can viably kill you, you don't need this. The damage is overkill, it's comfort, but you are much better swapping Raiment for a defensive chest like this with Ever Living on it to take less damage from vulnerable enemies, as enemies are always vulnerable, ideally with % total armor on. This is kind of the way to go if you're ever in danger. Then, yeah, Staff of Lamb Esen. This beauty is great. The crit strike damage, good. The lightning damage, good. The close damage, good. And then this primary resource restore, coupled with our extra resource gen, is nearly a full refill every time it goes off. It's kind of silly. Though, yeah, having a Wand and Focus affix-wise is still technically better, but this your cast of charge bolts have a chance to be attracted and last 300% longer that got swapped to it. It used to be the other way round with these. The staff had the piercing static, but this is so key. The fact that it can be a 50% chance is important. So to really hammer home how beautifully effective the combination of these two is, on top of, you know, the build powering it all up, I am just going to fire charge bolts away from the 5 elite dummies here, and I guarantee you that very, very quickly we will just kill them all without actually ever looking at them. Yeah, I mean, already you just see it happen. So many X-Files, so much ball lightning, so many explosions, so much damage, and we weren't anywhere near them, thinking about them, even aiming at them, even intending to kill them. So then you picture that spread out through a nightmare dungeon, and you see why everything just kind of dies all around you without you having to really aim or worry about it. It really is such an incredible incredible way to play. Affix-wise then, even though we only have literally 3 items that can have affixes, you want the following: lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, attack speed, mana cost reduction, resource generation, ranks of mastery, glass cannon and devouring blaze, movement speed, and then your general just damage to close, intelligence, and so on and so forth, with a special shout out to getting lucky hit chance with a barrier and total armor on your helmet. Everything else sort of falls in place because it's powered by uniques. Vampiric powers then are looking like this. You want your usual deadly duo of Accursed, Touch and Prey on the weak, so everyone is cursed and therefore everyone is vulnerable, taking more damage, and you know how this goes, it's just supremely effective. As is Ravenous for this permanent, in my case, near 60% attack speed, so you can charge bolts super quickly even though you're using a staff, and we have the mana to more than keep up with it. It really is awesome. Then we have Infection as our source of poison damage to get that 4th stack of Tal Rashas, and then finally Domination for if you are using Raiment, and it can get that extra damage squeezed out while everyone is stunned. If you are not using Raiment and doing harder content, then I would recommend just putting in Anticipation so we can stable currents more often, as that is more useful. So before we finish up with the Paragon board, just a quick how to actually play this. I mean, very simple. Use your Flame Shield both for mana and to not die in an emergency, teleport to speed on through the dungeon and also for the mana, and then just every time you don't have 4 stacks of Tal Rashas, we get 2 from just the fire and the shock, the 3rd from the poison, so every time that says 3 instead of 4, just put down a blizzard and get your 4th and then maintain it. You really don't have to cast this too often. On bosses, just lay it down every now and then, as the extra lucky hits X-Files does help. Use your unstable currents whenever you're in a big pack of elites or on cooldown against bosses, and then just Lightning Spear on cooldown. The rest of the time just moving through, spamming your charged bolts, and know that they will just go do their thing even when you are not near any of the enemies, as you can see. I really can't get over just how well and purely this just works. Paragon board then for this one is quite fun. We begin with our beginning board, as you may imagine, so stay with me point for point. Heading on up after we've got Resilience and Elementalist to our first glyph slot, in which is, well, Elementalist, an extra 15% multiplicative, and amping that non-physical and all resist. It's the perfect glyph here. And get said non-physical and all resist, and then up we go into our Enchantment Master board. Here is our terrific trifecta that gets us a lot of non-physical, which apart from just being a huge damage amp, does power later legendary nodes. Get it in this way with this little branch. You'll notice that we are very minimally just kind of getting the rare node and not the extras, because we really do need the points later on here. Then once we have also got Erudite, we get our glyph that is reinforced, the constant DR with a barrier, which we always have, and the extra non-physical and all resist is very. Then all that is left to do is exit up to the right here, and we get our Burning Instinct, Burning Synergy board, going straight down firstly for Cinders, then over and up for Kindling. Again, we're not getting all the extras, we really need the points to go far in this one, and then we go down to the glyph slot where Destruction sits. More crit damage, we get what dex we can, but we don't have the spare points to get all of it, and then we go down for Smoldering Embers for a little bit of extra DR. Now we can leave this board down below, and this one is your Elemental Summoner board in this orientation, so that we can immediately drop left and get all the extra maximum mana, which helps a lot in keeping our charged bolts firing, and the health ain't too shabby either. But mainly then goes straight down and right here just under the glyph slot, and then get Adept, so our ball lightnings are larger when they're spawned, and more importantly in this case, hit harder. We can easily get the intelligence by just following this path without really deviating, and that works out nicely. head on down to Erudite for a little bit more all resist. You will be super ultra max 70% capped in everything in this build, and then we finally go get a load more non-physical damage with Keeper of the Elements. Then we want to head down here to our next board, which is your Static Surge board. Go down to the left, straight to the glyph. The glyph here is Flame Feeder, a requirement if you are using Flame Bolt enchantment, as it's a big damage increase. Head right to grab yourself more maximum mana and damage to stunned enemies. This is really nice to have. And then left and down for Incapacitate for even more damage to stunned enemies. Then we go get the legendary node, so we have even more mana regen and vulnerable uptime from our charged bolts. Then we go onto our final board, which we go right from the Adept glyph into here, and this is your Frigid Fate board. Now, I wish I had the spare points to get the extra lucky hit chance up here, but sadly I don't. But we do want to go straight across and get Frigid Fate for an extra 20% multiplicative to vulnerable. Then go down through weakness and over to the glyph, which will be territorial for less damage from close and more damage too close, just to keep us alive even more in tier 90 plus. Head down to get the dex to activate it, and then head up to get the dex to activate it, which finishes off our Paragon setup, and I really am quite happy with this one. There's a lot of just reaching for more glyphs and boards, but I think it does give us the nicest amount of power and comfort for our points. Hopefully you can follow it all right, and with that, we are done. I really hope you give this a go. I can't express how well it works, how fun it is to play, and just how much constant damage you're pumping out everywhere on every enemy all of the time. Yes, it doesn't do the pure DPS of Ball Lightning, but it just kills everything on screen automatically with these charge bolts going everywhere, tracking, lasting longer, piercing, and then it summons Ball Lightnings on them anyway, while also making you ridiculously tanky. As I say, this really is a hard tier 90 plus content buster, and if you find yourself struggling in that department, this will do wonders for you. It's also great in open world too, from, again, the charge bolts just going everywhere and just giving you loot to pick up. I'm really proud of this one, and I hope you very much enjoy it. And indeed, until next time, like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.